Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host Gyro. Today I'd like to report to you on a very exciting new build project of mine for Path of Exile Siege of the Atlas League 3.17, and it is a summoner, a necromancer, which relies on raging spirits. It's a Summon Raging Spirit Necromancer with a few supporting minions, as you can see from here. This is a very exciting project because the build already is a lot sturdier than my staple build that I start my builds with, my leagues with, the Arc Witch. It is a lot sturdier, a lot tankier, a lot more powerful, and to be honest with you, it's such an easy mode compared to playing the other builds that I almost would wonder at this stage, why play anything else? Well, when this can do everything, can just melt bosses, can surround them fully, not let them move almost while you are standing in the relative safety. It is better than totems because these running totems around, they run around for you. You don't need to reposition them and stuff like that. This is not to say that I suddenly dislike traps or mines or totems. That is still Gyro staple things that I play. So very quickly, this is not a build guide. So first of all, let's take a quick look at the passive skill tree. This Necromancer build relies on one of my favorite content creators builds, Kay's Summon Raging Spirits build, but Kay, she is, as a lot of other creators of Path of Exile on YouTube, she is more high-end. She talks about a very fleshed out builds with expensive jewels, with expensive, super duper optimized and rather rare, very expensive, most importantly, gear that supports these builds and stuff like that. What I've done this time around is, for the second time in kind of my process of making these builds for my audience, I have taken one of her builds, I have tried it out for myself, I tried it on, so to speak, and I simplified it. I made it a lot more, I think, user-friendly. Again, the build is not finished, but I'm getting there. And it is very cheap at this current level, as I'm just kind of cutting into the end game. I am just melting the tier 3 maps. I know it's fairly low, but for casuals and beginners of Path of Exile, this is indicative that this thing just melts everything at the investment of about 10-15 Chaos Orbs. Take that in, 10-15 Chaos Orbs. Okay, so of course to kill Cyrus and so on and so forth, you need exalts, you need a lot more investment, but I am going to continue developing this build and see exactly how that pans out. That is my plan. Leave a comment below, like the video if you would like to see more from this build. That's the only way for you to let me know to continue working in this direction and tell me that you are interested. Now, as you can see, I'm not going to take you through the whole passive skill tree because this is not a build guide. It's just an indication. I am relying on literally one particular jewel here that is particular piece of my staple thing. This is not part of Kay's build, this is my build. So the Fortress Covenant is something that I have been lucky enough to find, or you would need to buy it from the community market. This is an optional addition to the build, you don't have to have it, but as you can see, it adds fairly massive amount of damage to minions and it allows them to block attack damage and spell damage. And the way I've laid out this build, slightly differently to Kay's build, is in such a way that we are far enough from any other activated notable skill points here, because so the negative part of this jewel is the fact that other skill points, other passives, are converted into minions taking plus 20% of increased damage, and we obviously don't want that. So as you can see, all of these notables have been converted, and yes, I would have loved to make use of some of them, at least this one used to give extra life. I used to, like, Kay's build relies on this specific cluster, which I cannot take obviously because of this jewel, but I think the trade-off is completely worth it. And yes, I will take you through this build in greater detail once it's finished. Yeah. Now, taking a look at the very basic budget-friendly gear that I'm using, I am playing with Midnight Bargain. Midnight Bargain is a very cheap wand. You can buy it for 1 Chaos Orb and take a look at the massive increase in power that you experience from it. But why is it a bargain? Well, because it reserves 30% of your life. That's 1/3. That's a lot. Any elitists, any pros who are scraping the tier 16 maps and killing every boss imaginable, they'll say that that's too high of a price, too damn high to run with this kind of thing, and I probably would agree with you. But for this level of casual running and kind of going through early towards mid-game, mid-end game, I think this is a wonderful, super strong, super fun item to play with, and at the moment I am okay with this trade-off. I am actually okay with it. So that's one thing to point out. I'm using another very cheap item here that boosts my minions more further, and it gives me extra elemental resistances. I would dare say that for kinda casual players who are not min-maxing and don't have exalts to spare, this is probably one of the best accessible and very cheap items, Skullhead Helm, to play minions with, minion builds with. So that's what I'm using too, which is very, very good. I have pretty much spent all my aura, all my mana on auras, on running auras that we're going to take a look at very, very quickly in a moment, which is why I need Praxis Ring, which increases my mana by quite a bit, and it also gives me a bit of mana back. So without Praxis Ring, I can tell you, I recommend that you buy it again for 1 Chaos Orb. That is the total of 3 Chaos Orbs spent so far. That's very, very cheap so far. The wand, the helmet, the ring. You need it to avoid mana issues, basically. End of the story. You need it, okay? Now, this Seed Breath Pour Amulet, you might want to buy it or you might want to skip it. It's a pretty good amulet, and you can use it pretty much from level 1, which makes minion leveling, which is, it makes life much, much easier straight away. You probably can also get it for 1 Chaos Orb. I found it, and I think it's very plentiful. I saw so many drops of it. You probably would have found it yourself. Where it gets expensive, and imagine me doing the air quotes here, is when we start talking about the 6-linked socketed robes and other kind of things. Again, this is not optimized. This is what I could find on the market. Relatively cheap. I think I bought this 6-linked socket robe for 8 Chaos Orbs. So that is, again, we're still sitting nicely under 15 Chaos Orbs budget, which is very, very budget, very, very nice, yeah? We're investing into extra mana, we're investing into minions whenever we can, and we are also boosting our life pool. We want to be as thick as possible, simply because we know that Midnight Bargain is going to take some of that life away. So every bit of life counts here, absolutely. I have much better belts, much more witch-friendly belts, so don't tell me that this is rubbish. I'm simply using Belt of the Deceiver to give myself a little bit more strength, yeah, and to also allow myself for extra elemental resistances with intimidation of close enemies, so it is a little bit of a defensive layer. Is it the best build in slot? Not by a country mile shot, but it is what it is. Now, one thing that Kay basically gave me an idea of, and I thank her for that, and that is something absolutely is front and center of this build, is the replica of Bones of Ullr. I have had drops of Bones of Ullr original boots, but these ones I absolutely had to buy, because I think the replica drops from the bosses I have not killed yet personally. So these boots do a massive favor to us, to this build, because this build relies on Raging Spirits. Everything else, zombies are just mid shields, Chaos Golem is just boosting minion life, and the specters are just throwing frenzy charges on everything, yeah, that they can reach. But the main punch is packed by the Raging Spirits, and that is why these boots allow us to refresh duration of Raging Spirits when they're fighting a boss, when they're fighting a unique enemy. I think, needless to say, it's fantastic. Now, most important class 10, I'm not going to go through all of them because it's not a build guide, it's just a check-in quickly here. We have Summon Raging Spirits, and we have plus 2 levels to Raging Spirits from the global modifiers. That means that Ascendancy node, that I'll show you in a second, gives us extra 2 levels. We have minion damage support, we have combustion support because they do fire damage, we have unleash support so that we can summon a lot of them at the same time rather than keep clicking, yeah? And the only limitation here is that I'm mana starved, so I admit that at the moment this build definitely requires a lot more work. Otherwise, I am mana starved. I cannot say anything. I can do only two shots of Raging Spirits and summon as much as possible of them, and it's okay. I'm still almost here. See, I'm balancing on the maximum number of Raging Spirits allowed on 20, so that's pretty good. But basically, that's my only massive limitation of this build right now, which I'm working on, and I'll report to you later how it goes. So we have Unleash support to summon a lot of Raging Spirits straight away. We have Predator support because I'm signaling prey all the time. I'm signaling the prey to increase the damage that the prey takes and to redirect my Raging Spirits when I need to redirect them onto rares and most painful opponents, basically. That's what I'm doing, yeah? And that is probably as far as the high-level overview of what's happening here. As far as the auras that I'm running are concerned, I am investing into armor. I am running Determination. I'm running Tempest Shield for extra block chance and spell block chance, which is really, really helpful. And I'm also running Defiance Banner. Very, very quickly, I'll show to you the Ascendancy currently that I've done. First, we would go for Mindless Aggression. Second, I went to Commander of Darkness to increase elemental resistances that were lacking otherwise, and to allow my minions to do more damage. And third, I was playing kind of with an option of going for Bone Barrier, because I could use an extra level of protection, because I am donating 30% of my life, let's not forget that, in the current gameplay scenario. So I played a little bit with Bone Barrier, which was fine, but I tried to boost a bit more damage and see just how bad the survivability will be, and at the moment it's not too bad. So I dropped this and I picked Unnatural Strength, which gives +2 to level of all minion skill gems, obviously making Raging Spirits and their friends stronger. That is most important stuff for you, my friends, today. This is not a build guide, but the build guide is coming, especially if you're interested, and leave a comment. And otherwise, I'm gonna say goodbye for now, and I'm gonna go kill some bosses in the end game and push this build as far as I can before I switch to anything else. Thanks very much for tuning in today. I'll be speaking with you again sometime very, very soon. Bye for now.